Throughout Greek mythology, there's plenty of stories and lore surrounding hundreds of different heroes, gods, and goddesses alike, achieving heroic deeds or committing evil atrocities, with tales of the time surrounding stories of unimaginable magic and divine powers that, if frankly you ever stepped out of line once as a human, you could potentially screw up your entire save file and end up in the Shadow Realm.
I hear the Shadow Realm's lovely this time of year. Let's find out!
Makes me kinda glad I didn't grow up alongside eldritch entities and demigods. Upon researching all of these different divinities, one question always came up that had no answer. How, out of the core group of Greek gods and goddesses, do they all rank in terms of strength, power, and overall combat prowess? Like, I mean, if these world-altering beings were to square up with one another, who would sit at the bottom and who reigns supreme? Some positions I feel like might be obvious, but after going over all of these entries, I'm surprised where everyone ended up. According to Greek mythology, there's usually a core 12 or so gods and goddesses that make up the prime time members of Mount Olympus, and depending on interpretation, these members can fluctuate. So to make things easier, to not leave anyone out or say any scholars' perspectives are incorrect, we'll be rounding our number of gods getting ranked up to 14. Going one by one, we'll be explaining each god's origins, what powers they hold, and their overall ability to not only fuck up the world, but legendary heroes, divine creatures in their way, and even other gods. If scaling mythological beings from ancient Greek mythology based on levels of destructive power, combat intelligence, and straight up hand throwing sounds interesting to you, click that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and most importantly, thank you for watching. The Herald of the Gods. Hermes is known as the protector of human travelers, merchants, and thieves. He's legendary for his ability to move freely through the mortal and divine realms, thanks to the help from his winged sandals. Hermes commonly plays the role as soul guide, conductor of souls as they make their way to the afterlife. Also known as the messenger of the gods, Hermes is most known to be the son of Zeus and Maya. He is also known as the divine trickster, and his symbols include the rooster, the tortoise, a winged helmet, or palm tree. His main icon is the caduceus, a winged staff wrapped around with two serpents engaging in coitus. Hermes' closest Roman counterpart would be Mercury. When it comes to power or strength, Hermes isn't known to have much of it. Although being considered a great asset during the Trojan War, Hermes was more so beneficial in saving allies or using his speed and trickery to best enemies. Despite being fast and a bit of a sexual predator, it seems like Hermes doesn't really have much else going for him besides just literally being a god. Aphrodite is the Greek goddess of love, lust, beauty, and procreation. Her Roman counterpart is Venus, and her major symbols are seashells, roses, sparrows, and swans, among other things. In the Iliad, Aphrodite is the daughter of Zeus and Dionis, being married herself to the Greek god Hephaestus, god of fire, blacksmithing, and metalwork. I wouldn't really consider that a divine relationship though, considering Aphrodite cheats on bro every single chance she gets and was one of the three goddesses responsible for sparking the flames of the Trojan War. Constantly depicted as an infinitely desirable adult, always being naked and being sus. Aphrodite sits at the bottom of the list also for being known as a weakling god, whose main powers revolve around the ability to infatuate people with others or make them completely undesirable to the ones they love. To the point, Aphrodite has driven people to unaliving themselves with the mind games she's played, resulting in the deaths of many who have angered her. Aphrodite can also transform like any other god and punish mortals. However, when it comes to actual power, gets injured by a human hero, and Zeus is immediately like, "Girl, what are you doing? Get back over there and make people horny." The Greek god of war and courage, and a child of divine communion between both Zeus and Hera. Aries' symbols are the sword, spear, and shield, his Roman equivalent being Mars. As the Greek god of war, his reputation for savagery and bloodlust is in direct contrast to his sister Athena, who was meant to represent military strategy and the more dignified aspect of battle. Aries was known to imbue the locations he visited with a tendency for bloodlust and violence. Despite his reputation as the god of war, Aries' more brutal and untamed tendencies result in his constant humiliation from a lot of the other gods in Olympus, as not only does he lose the battle for the Trojans during the Trojan War single-handedly by losing to Athena and Diomedes and forcing the Trojan forces to fall back, only to return to Mount Olympus and get chastised by Zeus for being the absolute quote-unquote worst of the gods. Ares is then embarrassed once again after Zeus allows all the gods to return to the battlefield, looking to get revenge on Athena, only to be overpowered by her and struck by a boulder. Ares is also often humiliated by other gods as well, shown when he's tricked by Hephaestus into exposing his affair with Aphrodite to Mount Olympus, or when two giants, lesser beings mind you, imprison Ares in a bronze urn for 13 months until Hermes and Artemis step in to save him. For the Greek god of war, Ares is honestly pretty pathetic. Artemis is the Greek goddess of the hunt, wilderness, nature, and wild animals, as well as childbirth and chastity. Her Roman equivalent is Diana, and she's also a virgin. Nerd! The daughter of an extramarital relationship between Zeus and Leto. When discovered by Hera, Artemis and her twin brother Apollo were forbade from being born anywhere on the land of Olympus, instead being brought into this world on the island of Delos. It's unclear between different myths whether Artemis or Apollo were born first, but one thing's for sure, if this was a popularity ranking, Artemis would come in number 1, having the reputation as the most worshipped Greek god of all time, her symbols being the bow and arrow, hunting knives, or a quiver. As a child, little is known about Artemis, although she's imagined as a young child practicing archery. She wishes to forever be a virgin, nerd, have many names, have a special bow and arrow from Cyclops, be the Lightbringer, have a short enough tunic to hunt, have 60 daughters as a personal choir, 20 handmaidens to take care of her dogs, to rule over all the mountains, to be assigned any city and only visit when being called by birthing mothers, and aid women in the pains of childbirth. The genie only said 3, damn. Artemis maintains the basic god powers of punishing mortals and shapeshifting, as well as maintaining full control over her hunting dogs, and other hunting dogs as well, as shown when she turned the great hunter Actaeon into a stag and had his own dogs eat them, as if they forgot who their owner was. Her skill with a bow is renowned, depicting in a myth where she Red Dead Redemption sharpshoots 7 of some random queen's daughters because she was talking shit about being a better mom than Leto. But Artemis, believe it or not, also can take down actual threats as well, like raining arrows upon one of Zeus's gigantic sons, Tityos, for trying to essay their mother. Artemis really isn't too reputable of a warrior though. Her only notable feat in battle is slaying the daughter of the divine Greek hero that took on the Chimera, and following this amazing achievement up by making the dumb decision to oppose Hera, the queen of gods, who slaps Artemis around with her own bow and sends her crying back to Daddy Zeus, keeping Artemis as low on the list as she is. The Greek god of blacksmiths, carpenters, and fire. Uncertain in certain myths if Hephaestus was the son of Zeus and Hera, or was an asexual birth through parthenogenesis by Hera in revenge for Zeus laying with Metis and conceiving Athena. Hephaestus' symbols were the hammer, crafting tools, and his Roman counterpart was Vulcan, originally cast out of Olympus due to his lameness, otherwise known as a limp brought on by congenital impairment, which was a pretty fucked up thing to do considering Hephaestus essentially made almost every single one of the Olympians' weapons and armors. He was capable of crafting equipment thought to be imbued with powers and magic divinity beyond any other. Hephaestus crafted Hermes' winged helmet and sandals, Achilles' armor, Helios' chariot. If it was from a Greek myth, you could probably find Hephaestus' watermark on it. After being exiled from Olympus, Hephaestus is one of the only gods to be allowed to return, due in part to how fucking integral he was to society's infrastructure and progression. Hephaestus refused to return at first though, and was even able to trick Hera, the queen of all gods, by building her a golden throne that, once she sat upon, could no longer stand up from. This, of course, was frowned upon by many of the other gods, and after many tried, it was Dionysus who was able to trick Hephaestus up to Mount Olympus by getting bro wasted. As mentioned before, Hephaestus was married to Aphrodite, but she's for the streets, so he's also known for trapping her and her boo thing Aries in a chain and exposing them in front of all the other gods. Despite his multiple tales of getting one over on other gods, when it comes to overall power level, the Greek god of blacksmithing surprisingly isn't that strong. His strengths lie in his ability to craft. As shown when in the Trojan War, despite being able to defeat giants, specifically the Gigante Mimas, by throwing molten iron at him, Hephaestus flees in battle against another giant named Aristeus. However, in some interpretations, Hephaestus is also known as the volcano god, being described as a demon of fire coming up from earth. This dominance of flame and gas is depicted in the Iliad, where he uses his fire powers to dry the waters of Scamandrus to force its homonym deity in battle with Achilles to retreat. Regardless of his great power and wit compared to some of the weaker gods on this list, Hephaestus ultimately falls short when it comes to actual battle prowess and domineering force, wielding more power than your average god, but suffering from being too chill and focusing his energy into his work, rather than, you know, smiting mortals or whatever else other gods do. Hestia, the virgin goddess of the hearth and the home. She is one of the original Olympians, devoured by her father Cronus as an infant because of his paranoia of being overthrown by his offspring. Hestia is freed by her younger brother Zeus and became one of the new rulers of the cosmos. However, unlike some of her brothers and sisters engaging in grand tales of conquest and war, Hestia chooses to mostly withdraw from mythology and is scarcely heard of, choosing to never marry and forever tend to the hearth of Olympus. Her Roman equivalent is Vesta. Despite her absence, Hestia remains important in worship and is the first to receive an offer during every sacrifice. Responsible for feeding the fires of Olympia with animal sacrifices, she did only once seem to abandon her post in this position to join her siblings in the fight against the giants. Our only hint about Hestia's level of divinity is when Aphrodite is unable to hold any power over her in the Homeric hymn, as eldest daughter of the 5 original Olympians devoured by Cronus. Hestia maintains a slight advantage over most of these nothing burger gods simply due to seniority and assumption her veteran status grants her a higher level of spiritual essence. Hera is the queen of all gods, but most notably, the Greek goddess of marriage, women, and family. She is the sister and wife of Zeus, as well as one of the original 6 children of the Titans Rhea and Cronus. It is well known throughout Greek mythology and culture that Hera is most reputable for her jealous and vengeful nature, referred to as the Karen of Olympia. Most of Hera's lore revolves around her being scorned for Zeus's many love affairs and illegitimate offspring.
Holy cow!
Her symbols are the pomegranate, a scepter, and a crown, and Hera is typically depicted as a dignified and matronly figure that presides over weddings and protects women from childbirth. I guess better than Artemis does? Hera's Roman counterpart is Juno. To be fair, I don't think Hera does a single thing in all of Greek mythology besides try and sometimes succeed in making other people do her dirty work, usually having something to do with attacking a former mistress of Zeus. Hera's biggest contribution is making it her life's mission to fuck with Heracles as much as she can, even attempting to have him assassinated as a mere infant. She is presumed powerful due to her status of divinity and the fact she was born of Titans against the previous generation of gods before them. However, most of her power, again, stems from high status as queen, giving her access to multiple consorts and allies that have no choice but to help her in her antics. For purposes of power scaling, she sits right here next to Hestia on the Hill of Assumptions. And although her role as queen probably does grant her higher power than some of the gods I'll rank above her, if we're strictly talking hand throwing, I think a couple people got Hera cooked. Dionysus is the Greek god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, insanity, ritual madness, and theater, also known as Bacchus, named after a frenzy that he is known to induce on mortals, Bacchaea. Dionysus is known as the god with many births, due to the complicated nature of his origins being different depending on the cult worshipping him, and multiple changes over history. Dionysus was at first thought to be the son of Zeus and Persephone due to his connection with the underworld. Although this was changed when potentially Dionysus was considered a foreign god, simply allowed into the fold of Olympians towards the end of their reign. His Roman counterpart is Liber, known to be a god that frequented the mortal realm often, constantly fraternizing with human society. Dionysus is responsible for raising multiple cities throughout the world unintentionally as he traveled across the lands. Some depict these journeys as military conquests due to the sheer amount of followers Dionysus would carry at a time, once said to have conquered the entire world except for Britain and Ethiopia. This was due in part to his creation of wine, being the first person to extract the juices of the vine itself. Because of the madness Dionysus was known to spread wherever he went, the god and his followers weren't well liked by the other Olympians, responsible for driving kings and leaders insane for spiting him, even stepping up his crimes and maddening the gods themselves in some stories. Once, when thought to be a human prince and attempted to be kidnapped, it was said no rope would bind Dionysus, and the god was able to transform into a dangerous lion, conjuring a bear that tore the mortals apart. Due to his unlikability amongst the other gods and his association with the underworld, most of his godhood was spent fighting against skeptics and challengers of his divinity. Dionysus was even the one responsible for the myth of King Midas, casting the spell on him that caused everything he touched to turn to gold. Although he was at least nice enough of a god to help him out with that problem later. Dionysus's most common symbol is his thyrsus, a scepter woven with ivy and dripping with honey, which, ew, that shit would just be sticky. It's said to be both a beneficial wand to his followers as well as a weapon of destruction to his opposers. His connection to the underworld also allows Dionysus to communicate and share the ability to communicate between those of the living and dead. As for power level, although Dionysus himself is not much of a fighter, much more of a lover, his divinity, as shown to all who challenged him, was frankly no joke. Just managing to drive even some of the gods themselves insane in certain instances, or deceive them in any way, is nothing to scoff at. And with the way he disposes of mortals, even high-born warriors or kings with the flick of a wrist who bother him just proves his strength. He's also one of the only gods with a second form, called Dionysus Eleuterios, also known as the Liberator, the free-flowing ecstasy of letting loose from anxiety and self-consciousness grows and possesses all of those around him, giving Dionysus the power to quote-unquote subvert the oppressive restraints of the powerful. I imagine this would be the form that allows him to contend with the other gods. Demeter, one of the original gods swallowed by Cronus in fear of the gods one day overthrowing the Titans. As the Greek goddess of the harvest and agriculture, Demeter is also worshipped as the goddess of health, birth, and marriage. She is the second child born to Titans Rhea and Cronus. Demeter is well known for the power of a mother's wrath. Her most known myth revolving around her daughter Persephone being abducted into the underworld by Hades. In response to discovering the king of the underworld stole her daughter, Demeter, neglecting her duties as a goddess, plunged the entire world in the famine and plague, where death reigned and life could never grow. Zeus ordered Persephone to be returned, but because she had eaten food from the underworld, she was forbidden to leave, only able to visit her mother for certain times of the year. And that's how we get seasons, kids. Not sure what global warming means if that's the case, but I think it's better if we just don't worry about that. This debacle also granted Demeter powers over the underworld itself, as well as the earth, often being conflated or mixed in a lot of myths as the goddess of the earth, due to her feats of control over not just nature and life on the planet, but death and fertility itself, thanks to her undying motherly connection to Persephone. In other words, Demeter controls death almost as much as she controls life in some respects, due to Demeter being an original and all-powerful being born from the long-gone Titans of old. Her power as a god exceeds most below her. Demeter's magic allows her to conjure extreme wrath, such as infernos, forced shapeshifting, and even stomping on bitches who disrespect her daughter Persephone and talk shit behind her back? Let's go. But as far as stats like attack power, durability, or things of that nature, she doesn't really seem to have much. I mean, if she causes mass famine to the world and like hides, she could beat some gods that way, but besides her general divinity level granting her a much higher spot on this list by default, Demeter isn't really doing much in a 1v1 quickscope match in Rust, you know? The god of archery, music, and dance. Truth and prophecy, healing, and diseases. The fucking sun, considered to be the most beautiful god. Apollo is the son of Zeus and Leto, the twin brother of Artemis, and is known to be one of the most important Greek gods in history. Seen around the world as the one who wards off evil, Apollo was known as a prophetic deity, an oracle consulted for guidance in trying times. Apollo had enough power to single-handedly save society from epidemics, yet was also capable of inflicting deadly disease and plague upon them with his toxic arrows if he so wished. In fact, along with his sister Artemis, Apollo is responsible for the creation of archery as a whole, always seen carrying his gold or silver bow and arrows. Not only was Apollo oracle-like with his future sight, Apollo had free reign to access Zeus's mind of knowledge, repeatedly exposing this information to mortals as Apollo saw fit. Even as a child, he was responsible for helping humans build cities and infrastructure. At this time, Apollo was even capable of slaying Python, the dragon serpent, with a mere bow and arrow, despite his young age. Apollo was exiled for this, but after being a slave for 9 years, he became another one of the gods to return to Olympus despite being cast away, only to shortly after this have to murder another giant named Tityos because Hera sicked on his mom Leto in a jealous rage. Up until this point, he makes all the previous gods' deeds look like child's play, and in the Trojan War, combined with his power of foresight and massive strength and durability, Apollo single-handedly rallied the troops of the Trojans and pushed the Greeks back. And when the other gods joined the battle, Apollo showed time and time again he could protect his soldiers from the other gods' or heroes' attacks, showing the two sides of Apollo again as a kind healer to his allies and a harbinger of destruction that can inflict terror in his enemies just from a war cry. At the end of it all, Apollo's main shining achievement in the war was, depending on your interpretation, he was either responsible for or greatly assisted in the death of Achilles, touted as being one of, if not the greatest of all the Greek warriors. When it comes to gods who aren't just world-ending omnipotent forces, Apollo is indeed the cream of the crop. But as we get higher, you'll see why he can't even come close to the top 3, considering when having the chance to battle Poseidon, a much higher ranked god, Apollo bitches out almost instantly, claiming it's for the good of the mortals he refuses to fight. Nice try. Hades, god of the dead and king of the underworld. He was the eldest son of Titans Cronus and Rhea, making him the very last one to be regurgitated from their father's stomach when Zeus freed them. He and his brothers Poseidon and Zeus are the ones responsible for defeating their father Cronus' generation of gods in the Titanomachy War. He is normally portrayed wearing his helmet with the three-headed guard of the underworld Cerberus at his side, and his Roman counterpart is Pluto. Despite being an asshole role and essentially kidnapping and trapping his wife Persephone in the underworld with him. Like the incel most Greek gods were, Hades was known to be pretty altruistic and a fair god for being someone with the title Lord of the Dead. Hades cared little for the events that went on up above, as his focus was more on ensuring every single subject of his was unable to escape and accurately accounted for. Hades was easily enraged when someone broke that one pet peeve of his, trying to leave, and his wrath was considered to be worse than death. He also gets angered by those who try and cheat death, such as lower god Asclepius being killed in his human life because he discovered a way to revive lost patients when he was a physician. Commonly known for his helmet that makes him invisible, and being responsible for ending a previous generation of Titan rule through 10 years of harsh fighting and bloodshed, it's safe to say Hades would smite most of the gods beneath him on this list, and the only problem he'd have with that would be getting up from his seat and leaving his damn house. I feel that, LOTD, very relatable. But seriously, with total control over the realm of the dead, those inside of it, and the ability to essentially torture you forever in this realm, Hades essentially has the greatest domain expansion in all of Greek lore. Most gods wouldn't make it to actual combat against Hades, and if they did, again, man beat Titans. Show me someone else below that could do that. The Greek god of the seas, storms, earthquakes, and horses? Poseidon was one of the original gods born from the consummation of the Titans Rhea and Cronus. Poseidon was child 5 out of 6, the last of which to suffer the fate of being eaten by their father. After the Titanomachy and dismantling the previous generation of Titans, Poseidon was granted dominion over the sea, commonly depicted with his trident. He was given the title Earthshaker because of his protection of seafarers and control over the ocean. Poseidon's Roman counterpart is Neptune. Known for being a bit of a cocky prick, Poseidon was commonly seen getting into competitions with the other gods for shows of superiority and winning of cities' favor. Most notably reputable for losing a contest to Athena and then condemning the entire city of Athens to monstrous floods for not just picking him as their favorite god anyway. Most tales of Poseidon are literally just him getting pissed and inflicting his wrath, or, you know, just essaying multiple different goddesses and human women, so maybe he should have just stayed inside Dad's stomach. It's not questionable that Poseidon is one of the strongest gods in all of Olympia. The dude controls the fucking ocean, bro, all water, and can just cause earthquakes, literally just split the earth open. Frankly, Poseidon is OP, even as far as gods go. The gap between him and his brothers like Hades or Zeus and the other gods and goddesses is honestly astounding, even without tales of myths to go along with it. The ancient Greek goddess of wisdom, handicraft, and warfare, regarded as the patron and protector of many cities across Greece, even, obviously, the city of Athens being named after her. Athena's major symbols include owls, snakes, and olive trees, and she is often depicted wearing a helmet and wielding a spear. Her Roman counterpart is Minerva, believed to have been born through parthenogenesis directly from Zeus's forehead itself. Regardless of the interpretation surrounding Athena's birth, it is almost always asexual reproduction. She is most notably known for being one of the only new generation of gods to best one of the original 6. As explained earlier with the whole Poseidon getting pissed Athena was cooler than her story. Although defeating Poseidon in a mere game of who could provide the villagers with a better natural resource, her aid to humans also involved military prowess, most usually seen and depicted fighting alongside multiple different Greek heroes. The reason Athena, as war goddess, was superior to Aries, god of war, was due to her wisdom, representing the much more intellectual and civilized side of battle, stemming from the virtues of honor and justice, rather than mindless carnage. Athena also eclipsed Aries, and frankly, most other gods and goddesses due to her representing the divine form of heroic excellence. Nigh perfect in aspects of close quarters combat and only coming to know victory and glory in fighting, dancing with no other mistress. The breastplate Athena was known for wearing in battle coated her in qualities of glory, stride, defense, and assault. In the Trojan Wars, Athena straight up just whoops Ares' ass using her Aegis, a powerful shield not even Zeus's thunder and lightning can pierce. She then crushes Ares with a boulder, immediately following this up by impaling his whore mistress Aphrodite with her golden spear. Athena was a girl's girl. She then threatens the other gods, claiming if they don't want to end up like the two she just offed, effortlessly by the way, they should rightfully fuck off. And fuck off they did. Athena is also a main protagonist in the Gigantomachy, the war of Olympians versus the giants, defeating multiple of the colossal beasts herself. And in some myths, Athena was also known to have defeated the legendary warrior Heracles when in a murderous, insane rage, the same way she took out Ares, with a big fucking rock. Screw the spear, guys. Sculpt Athena with a giant freaking boulder next time. She is the most fuck around and find out type of god, and frankly, when it comes down to pure challenge in battle, not many are able to oppose her. Not even the original 6 birth from the Titan Cronus. But I'm sure this will be my most controversial placement. And the number 1 god would of course be the granddaddy himself, the god of the skies and thunder, the king of Olympus himself, Zeus. The youngest of the children born from Titans Cronus and Rhea, and I'm just glad I don't have to say that anymore. The one responsible for making his father regurgitate his 5 other brothers and sisters. Zeus's symbol is commonly known to be the thunderbolt, but it also includes the eagle, bull, or the oak. And his Roman counterpart is Jupiter. Obviously being the king of Olympus, Zeus is held as the all-father of the gods, responsible for assigning roles and upholding law and order amongst divinity. To understand Zeus is to understand his father, the Titan Cronus. After castrating his own father, Uranus, the Titan Cronus became the supreme ruler of the cosmos, wedding his sister Rhea and giving birth to 6 godly children. However, maybe from a guilty conscience or something, Kronos was afraid that one of his own kids would commit the same patricide he himself was responsible for, and in self-fulfilling prophecy fashion, brutally ate each and every one of his children as they were born, except the 6th one. Kronos' wife Rhea was able to hide, giving Kronos a rock bundled in sheets, very easily mistakable for a young child. Zeus, in secrecy, grows and trains swiftly, and once he matures, Zeus faces his father, besting him in not only skill, but raw strength, forcefully freeing his siblings from Kronos' belly, and after gaining his signature thunderbolt, wages the Titanomachy, a 10-year bloody war where Zeus and his brothers Poseidon and Hades dismantled the Titans in a stalemated war. The king of the gods then proudly splits the realms with his 2 brothers, taking the sky, while Hades and Poseidon take the underworld and sea respectively. During Zeus's long reign on Olympus, his dominion is challenged many times, most notably in the Gigantomachy, a long war between the gods and the giants born from Gaia, drops of blood that burrowed into the earth from the Titans and became humongous, powerful entities of their own. Zeus was also challenged by a giant serpent named Typhon, who was also defeated by Zeus using his signature thunderbolt. Despite his overwhelming omnipotence and strength, Zeus is also well known for being a playboy. And while I say that jokingly, we've seen the other quote-unquote playboys on this list, and yeah, dare I say, you don't want to be a playboy, nor should you be one unintentionally. That being said, bro essentially Genghis Khan 90% of Greek mythology. It is, once again, a large enough portion of his character that he has an entire wiki segment dedicated to it. You might think it's unnecessary to mention, but clearly they didn't fucking think so. Zeus's last notable intervention throughout history was the Trojan War, where he mostly just kind of sat around and thought a bunch, ruined a fortress, stopped the gods from fighting, then okays them to start fighting again after he's like, okay, I mean, yeah, I guess. He fucks Hera, gets upset over some of his favorite warriors dying, and then ultimately says, I mean, yeah guys, I guess do whatever you want, which I do play as one big joke again, but ultimately, this does just go to show you how at the wave of a hand, the entire world bends to Zeus's will. And if that isn't a testament that he truly is the most powerful Greek god of all, I don't know what else will convince you. And that's all she wrote. Every single quote-unquote Important. Greek god and goddess, ranked weakest to strongest and explained to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video if you made it here. I sincerely appreciate that. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content similar to this, and leave a comment if I might have gotten something wrong or you just completely disagree with my placements. With all the different interpretations of god and goddesses, I'm sure there's a couple different ways this could really go. If you're interested, click on an end screen video to continue your binge, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.